Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today I'm taking my first look at Stalker the sci-fi role-playing game. I'm going to do this probably in two-part series. So part one, I'm just introducing the game to you and doing kind of an overview, going through like the player's portion of the rulebook. And then in the second video, I will cover a little bit more extensively the game masters section of the rules as well. So first of all, what first drew me to this is that this game was actually listed as an inspiration for the Mifrog role playing game, and I think more particularly its post apocalyptic supplement, The Coming. And so for a long time, I've actually had it on my my wish list, and I've only just recently gotten around to picking it up. I picked it up on Lulu for 30% off. I think I paid about $16.99 for it, so it was a fairly cheap acquisition as well. And it's a really nice sized book here. It's 246 pages long and a complete system, so you don't need anything else but this in order to play the game, although I'm sure that there are probably adventures out there that you can get your hands on and such. I haven't found it in any other format other than going direct and buying it on Lulu. So I don't recall seeing it on drive-through, so that might not be an option to pick up the book. But I certainly do recommend getting the soft cover of it because it really is a nice size book, and it's pretty well constructed as well. So it's certainly worth $17 if you can get it that price, and its regular price is around $19.99. So still a fairly cheap system. So when I first started going through this, I didn't know what to expect, but what I came across was something that really did surprise me. And I did not realize that it's predominantly a diceless system, which I've never reviewed before. I've never actually read through a diceless system before. And a lot of times when we think about and hear the terminology, diceless system, we think strictly narrative, and there are some rules to this that are numbers based that take it away from that, I believe. But it is predominantly a diceless, more narrative system than you might than certainly I expected, and what you might have experienced yourselves. So definitely an interesting book to get a hold of and to take a look. It was eye opening to see a different kind of system than what I've ever come across. So without further ado, I'm going to jump to. I wish I had the PDF to actually flip through and show you those sections a little bit better. So this is showing it off as best I can with a desktop camera as well. And so we'll proceed forward with that view. So here we have the book, and I wanted to jump right to the first section. Now, the first 46 pages of this book are background information for the players, for the GM on just what's going on in the world. And it is to look at the table of contents here. So we have the visitation and the visitation theory, and that is basically kind of setting up what the what the world is like, what is the main event that has taken place here, and basically how the world got into its post-apocalyptic setting once you kind of step into the game here. So So we have that the prevailing theory, and then other theories of the visitation and its full impact. I'm not going to give any spoilers here. It's just, really classic sci-fi, sci-fi post-apocalyptic storytelling, and so that's really really cool about this. It goes into the zones and the xenology of the place as far as artifacts and monuments and quasi chemicals. It goes through institutes, and then it finally gets to the um, the player character. Finally gets to the player characters in the world and what they are, and they're called stalkers. And it goes through and talks about the various types of stalkers and things. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail as well. And then we get to the player rules, which is basically how the game system actually works. And then finally, how to create a stalker for the game. And then we will pick up the next time with the Game Master's booklet for the next part. So let's go right to, and like I said, it's a huge section of the book. I mean, they talk about role playing and what is role playing, but once we get to the player's book here on page 13, all of these following nearly 30 pages are just additional information. It talks about refugees and what the refugees are, the cursed, the changed, the cursed. These are all classifications of peoples that you can encounter. The artwork is very, dark and grim, and it's very muddy, I would say, which is I think it's a good depiction of the the world and the environment that they want to create, the imagery that they want to create for the world here. We get into the zones, and so there is various zones where the player characters could begin their adventures, and it's a nice cross section across the entire world. So you have the USA, you have Canada, you have France, you have Russia, China, and Japan are all zones in which you can, begin. You have a section on borderlands and the fall. There is no society without people, only the buildings used for border control have water and electricity, so there's very limited resources. There's the Wild West. You have border towns, various anomalies that are taking place throughout the setting, and just a huge amount of depth to the world that was built here. So it really is incredible how much there is here just on that alone. So the genealogy of Stalker, an unnatural mixture of science fiction and formal logic. It's based on the false premise that human psychology is applicable to extraterrestrial intelligent beings. So that is from Roadside Picnic, which was one of the source materials for, just getting a feel for the world and understanding this particular genre of sci-fi. Xenology is the scientific discipline for studying and understanding of visitors and their motivations. It has become traditional in the science community to prefix xeno into any research or terminology concerning the zones, resulting in things such as xenotechnology, xenobiology, and so on. So just studying the various aspects of the visitors and such. So and then we get into artifacts and so on. Again, just a tremendous amount of background information. an institute, so officially all xenological research in the world has been concentrated under the IEC, the Institute of Extraterrestrial Cultures, or the Institute, as it is usually referred to. All right, and so this is kind of like the overarching organized, whether it be government or scientific research group, an institute that you may be employed by, or perhaps they're, in your particular setting, you might have them as being the opposition to what your player characters are doing, or they could work for it, or whatever. It's just a government entity that and a global one at that you can have as part of the storytelling of your particular campaign. We have management research divisions, and now we start getting to stalkers. All right, so not everybody approaches the Institute's monopoly on xenological research. There are many who would pay well for any artifacts and samples from the zone, no matter how they are gathered. This list includes governments, major corporations, military and ideological organizations, cults, rich individuals, and so on. When the Institute's price is too high or the permit is denied for political reasons, they will turn to shadowy fixers and organized crime. Demand creates supply. Preventing artifact smuggling and black market xenology has become one of the Institute's primary objectives. Stalkers are modern-day adventurers and outlaws who enter the zones to look for artifacts and samples to sell to the highest bidder. And so basically, stalkers are the PC group of scavengers, and you are going out there into the zones and searching for this alien technology and artifacts and monuments and such in order to bring back for sale, or to bring to whomever to sell those for a profit. You have heroes and criminals and so on. They have various names for different groups of NPCs or whatever. So you have a buzzard, which is an old stalker from Zone Canada. You have a czar, which is a rare stalker from Zone China. Former Russia Special Forces soldiers. Fishermen or Japanese stalkers named after his habit of approaching the Japanese zone from the sea, camouflage as a fisherman. You have cricket. So these are, just various kind of nicknames that some stalker types would have. Player's rules. So Stalker uses a diceless flow system. But diceless is not of an intrinsic value. The game master should have a couple of dice on hand in case something needs to be decided by a blind and random chance. In most tabletop role-playing games, success and failure is dramatically, and significant tasks of situations are determined by rolling dice. Yet the game master is responsible for interpreting the results and can change them to create the outcome he desires. In Flow, determining the results is just as arbitrary, but the players have more say in the final results than in most rule sets relying on dice. Basically, the way that this works is that your character does have an attribute score. And when I get to the player character sheet, I'll show you how that works. But and then the character can choose up to 6 skills that they may have. And those skills are categorized within those attribute scores. And to have 3 skills in one attribute is actually considered to have expertise in that tribute. Because if you're only starting with 6 total skills, and then to have picked half of them from one category, then that makes you basically an expert in that category. And then any action that the player is requesting to do, or suggesting he or she is going to attempt to do, and if it comes through one of those attribute categories, that they're an expert, let's say, well, then the GM will look at what they're asking to do, think about the challenge, and say to themselves, well, would an expert be able to be successful at doing exactly what the player has described? And if the answer to that is yes, then it happens. All right, they were successful. So no dice roll needed in there. Now, let's say that it's a particularly difficult task and the player's stats are not quite to that level. Well, it doesn't have to be an automatic failure. What the GM can tell the player is that, yes, you do have an appropriate skill, but this particular challenge is further made difficult by some circumstance. And how will you overcome that circumstance? And then the player would search for a way to enhance their ability so that once they're matching what the GM has in mind for the required success, then the GM would tell the player, yes, you are now successful. So let's say you're trying to lift a very heavy stone, and you have 2 in your fitness category. All right, but it's a really heavy stone. And so the GM already had set in her mind that you really needed a 3 in order to lift this stone. Well, the GM turns to the player and says, well, it is, with your strength, you're able to just shift it a little bit, but not much more than that, and not much to be effective as you were hoping to be. So how might you try to enhance your ability? And they can say, well, I would have Jimmy come in with his character and try to help me do this. And now with the combined strength of both, they're able to do it. Or it might say, well, I'm here by myself, but I'm looking around and I'm in a scrapyard. Are there any tools or any big pieces of metal or anything that I can use as a lever? All right, and that lever will give him or her, her, the +1 that they need in order to score that 3 and now have an expert ability of carrying out the action that they were looking to do. And so everything flows from this discussion. All right. So the abilities and the lack of abilities. Abilities depict the stalker's life experience, professional knowledge, areas of interest, and education, particularly anything that improves the stalker's chances and an ability. So you're going to have these various abilities tied to certain areas of the character sheet. As I said, I will go over that again. So creating a stalker. So the first thing you're going to do is choose a team role. Then you're going to do your life history and abilities, decide drawbacks, determine attributes, reduce funds if they're spending money, and then fill in the personal touches, and then finally finish. So it's a 7-step process of building a character. You can kind of see it here. Like I said, I wish I had a PDF to actually show you these things here. Individual versus team. A stalker is an agreement between the players and the game master. His statistics should not be shown to other players, and speaking in game technical terms should generally be avoided. If the stalker has a high fitness score, it is enough for the other players to know that he appears to be in really good shape. So Yeah, the other players at the table aren't supposed to know what your character's stats are. And that's part of the gameplay where it forces you to ask more questions or to explain better what you're looking to do. So it is a much more it's a less numbers crunching and more of a verbal exchange, more of a narrative approach to role playing. So again, my first experience with it, and it's something that I think will be a lot of fun to try to play a game with. So here we go with fitness and the abilities that are assigned to fitness and alertness and intelligence and or intellect, willpower, charisma, education, technology, and ability zones. So, I mean zone abilities. So let's look at fitness. So once again, you're going to have, based on how old your character is, you're going to have either 3 skills or 6 skills or potentially 9 skills. And that comes in over here where we talk about, so in childhood, you're going to have 3 abilities. For youth and educated individuals, you might have another 3 abilities on top of that. So a total of 6 abilities. Adulthood and career, so life from between 20 and 25, you might have as many as 9 abilities. So it's really based on how many your character may have. And like I said, it's treated like if you have more than or 3 or more in a particular area, you're going to be considered to be an expert in that particular area. So here under fitness abilities, you have the Budoka, you have throwing arm, you have melee, you have survivor, you have strong, you have woodsman, agile, fast, swimmer, and tireless. Under alertness, you might have night vision, good hearing, driver, pilot, burglar, reflexes, dexterous, sharp eyes, and so on and so on. So, if you were creating an adult character, which in most cases you probably are, then you're going to have up to 9 skills that you can pick up along the way. And then the number of skills that you have in there is going to generate what the attribute score is. So if I have 3 in fitness, I'm going to have a 3 in fitness. So we get here to the attributes, and they tell you the category of it, right? So if you have 0 skills and 0 attribute, then it's basically an ordinary ability. It doesn't mean you can't do the the action that you're looking to do. You're just going to need some enhancements and tell a really good story of how you intend to do this in order to give you the possibility of gaining one. All right. So between 1 and 2 abilities in a particular area is going to give you what's called good or talented ability. Excellent is anything from 3 to 4. Being perfect in a particular skill is having anywhere from 5 or 6 skill points within that same area. And they don't even bother going through if you had 9 or 10 in one particular area of expertise. You're just beyond perfect in that anyway. It'll be very, very difficult for you to actually fail any task in that particular category of what you're attempting to do. We go into wealth and details and ability-based equipment. So some equipment might require a particular fitness in order to carry and use it, whereas others might require you to have a certain amount of an intellect in order to utilize it and understand it, and so on. So there is some matching of ability scores and what you're looking to do. So for a pilot, for example, just looking at this, a Stalker is trained airplane and helicopter pilot, though most only specialize in one or the other. Even commercial pilots receive training for special circumstances and emergency missions. You have drawbacks. So drawbacks, most of these abilities are gifts the Stalker is born with and really hard to learn later on. However, they shape the story of his life and are likely to have led him to a profession or hobbies that utilize these gifts. However, you may have drawbacks as well. Some abilities here can train the hard way. Cars, guns, and criminal activities are all dangerous businesses, especially if the character has been involved with all three of these. Few burglars have never been caught, and their personal information, fingerprints, and biometrics are all known to the police. And so there are some drawbacks that are included in this, and it will become part of your storytelling. So let's take a look at the actual player sheet so that you can see, and we'll take a look at actually I have it here. So here's a blank character sheet. Very, very simple. So fitness, alertness, intelligence, willpower, charisma, education, technical, and zone. So that is 8 different attributes. So they're a little bit more than your typical game or RPG. You'll have your listed drawbacks, any injuries that you might have, and the equipment that you're carrying. So it's a single page here, and here we have a character sheet that's already pre-slugged out, right? So you have intelligence here. So their intellect is a 1, even though they have 2 skills in there, they're still within the 1 to 2 range here. You don't get up to a 2 unless you have 3 skills in that particular area. And so it's basically you're trying to match what the GM has set as the difficulty setting for the task that you're trying to do. So this person here, a task that requires a 3 is actually a very, very difficult task to do. It is much beyond routine. So within the educational field, especially a doctor, scientist, or xenologist, anything that they're trying to do within that scope should be something that's fairly easy for them to accomplish. All right. Whereas a little bit more difficult with willpower checks and or zone checks, and much more difficult where they only have a 0. They have no actual trained skills. So as you can see, it's a really interesting system. I've never played this kind of system before, and I'm really looking forward to it. And what I will do is I'll let this one upload today, and I will follow up with the GM's portion of it once I've read fully through it and develop a much better understanding of how the system is really supposed to work, because like I said, it's new for me as well. And then I'll come back with that video in a couple of days. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments about Stalker, if you've ever played it before, I would love to hear some of your comments, and I'd like to have a conversation with you talking about this game if you've played it before, and what your impressions are of it. And if you're interested in taking a look at it later on, if you want to have me sit in on one of your games or actually play in one of your games, I'm really, really open to that, because that would be the best way for me to learn how to use the system as well. And I just realized it's kind of dark in here, so It's overcast. It's supposed to snow really bad tomorrow, so it's kind of dark, which kind of matches the genre of this as well. So once again, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing and hit that bell so that you get alerts when I put up new stuff. I know I just spent the last couple of days just doing nothing but Cyberpunk 2077. And this actually almost ties into that a little bit, although post-apocalyptic and cybertech are not exactly the same genre. I could certainly see one leading into the other, and that's just another way that you could take these different types of genres and kind of mash them together. So that's another pretty cool thing that you can do, and always look for those follow-ups when you get an RPG, and if it gives you a list of books or short stories that they use for inspiration, I highly recommend that you go and take a look at those, especially if they're free to read. Go in there and take a look at some of those things just to get a general idea of how the genre is supposed to work, and then you bring it to your gaming. It's certainly going to enhance your gaming as well. So once again, thanks for joining. You all stay safe out there. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. And remember to leave your comments in the comment section there. I always get around to them, and I try to respond to them as best as I can. All right, you'll have a great afternoon. Take care.